The feet on the wheelchair here, Scott, this makes it look like a wheelchair. These $3 paint sprays, you know.
I don't have health care. I'm concerned.
I know, you should be.
Today, we are here to say no repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And no privatization to Medicare or Medicaid. So let's get started. Our first speaker today is Rebecca Zukaskis. She is an editor and a mom of an almost 4-year-old daughter who has autism. She's here today to talk about how Medicaid personally affects her family. So please welcome Rebecca.
Hi. Before I begin, I want to thank Senator Casey and Congressman Cartwright for fighting to defend the ACA, Medicare, and Medicaid. We really appreciate your efforts. My name is Rebecca Zukaskis. I went to college at Marywood University, and I've been living and working here in the Valley for the past 12 years. I'm here today to talk about my daughter, Amelia Rose. Amelia is smart, funny, and the sweetest little girl you'll ever meet. Amelia, who we call Mia, also has autism. She'll turn 4 on Thursday. Like many parents, my husband and I never thought we'd have a child with a disability. Mia was diagnosed this past summer, and since then, like other parents of children with disabilities or serious medical conditions, we've become passionate advocates for our daughter's care, fighting battles she cannot fight to make sure she gets the services that she needs. Mia attends school at Wyoming Valley Children's Association, and she receives wonderful care there that has really made a difference in her speech and other abilities. However, we were recently told she would benefit from additional speech therapy. Mia can sight read, she can say a lot of words, but she can't tell us when she doesn't feel well. She can't tell us what her day was like. We contacted John Hines to set up additional speech therapy for Mia. And although we have excellent health insurance through my job, Mia has Medicaid for her disability. The coordinator at John Hines said it was a good thing we had Medicaid because even our excellent insurance usually denies payment for the speech therapy Mia needs. Medicaid is the supplemental insurance that helps my family pay for the care that Mia needs to grow and succeed in life and at school. Our story is not uncommon, and there are many other families for which a block grant of Medicaid or a repeal of the expansion provided by the ACA would be even more devastating. A block grant of Medicaid would cut federal funding by $1 trillion over the next 10 years, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. A full repeal of the ACA and a block grant of Medicaid would cut funding by $2.1 trillion. This would leave millions of people uninsured or underinsured. Sorry. Today I want to say to the Republican Congress, to Donald Trump, and especially to our Senator Pat Toomey, that cutting funds that provide services and health care to individuals with disabilities and children with serious medical conditions isn't just wrong, it is morally reprehensible. Protecting the health care of seniors, people with disabilities, and our children shouldn't be something you have to debate. Parents like me shouldn't lie awake at night worrying if their children's health services or health insurance will be defunded. And I want you to think of my daughter and the services you are denying her and millions of other children like her when you decide how to vote on the future of health care in this country. I'm just one voice in a sea of millions of parents who refuse to be silent, refuse to allow you to take away the health care our children need without a fight. We aren't just their advocates, we are their warriors. We fight for them every day, and we won't stop now. We're going to keep protesting, keep rallying, keep calling and writing our representatives because they should be working for us, not the other way around. You need to protect the ACA, Medicaid, and Medicare. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is a Scranton native. I think that you all know him well. He has been one of the most outspoken Democratic senators during the age of the Trump administration, and he's been especially outspoken about the Affordable Care Act, Medicare, and Medicaid. So it's really my honor to welcome back to Scranton U.S. Senator Robert Casey.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, everyone. I want to say something to you first. The first thing I want to say is thank you for being here. Thanks for taking the time on a great Sunday to talk about a matter of basic justice, and that's health care. Health care for our children, health care for our families, and for our communities. So we're in a big fight, but you know what? We're going to win this fight. We're going to stop them. We're going to stop the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, and you know what? If we don't stop them in that, we're going to make sure that we replace it with what we want for health care, what we want for our families. Look, I know the other side talks about the Bible once in a while. Well, I got a line from the New Testament. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall be satisfied. And when we focus on an issue like health care, we're talking about a matter of basic justice. And you know what? We're hearing a lot lately from Republicans in Washington. They're saying, oh, don't worry when we repeal the Affordable Care Act. We're going to replace it with something much better. We're going to replace it with something that will be just fine, don't worry. But you know what? We've already seen the outlines of their ideas. They don't have a plan. They have a scheme to try to deceive you that they can get this done. But we're not going to let them perpetuate that lie, that scheme, okay? So when you hear Republicans talking about health savings accounts, think about someone who's, I want to tell you who's going to benefit from a health savings account. Someone who's really rich, all right? Not someone who's getting Medicaid, not Rebecca's family, not families that have benefited from the Affordable Care Act. So this is a scheme by Republicans in Washington, and we've got to stop them. Now, the most important voices you will hear today will not be mine or even the Congressman, with all due respect to Matt Cartwright, a great fighter on these issues, or even Secretary Osborne. It's the voices behind me of families who are going to talk about their circumstances. So I'm not going to get into a long debate about what's right about the Affordable Care Act. We know what it did. We know 20 million people have health care. We know that 156 million people have better protections because they've got employer-sponsored coverage. They have protections they never had before until we pass the ACA, okay? I'm going to just end with one note, with one focus. And Rebecca, I'm glad she brought it up. Medicaid. We can talk about Medicare, and we've got to protect it with all our might. But Medicaid is where they're coming, okay? There are two speeding trains headed for people that have the benefit of Medicaid. And we're talking about Medicaid, we're talking about babies, people with disabilities, and people who are over the age of 65. Those three groups of Americans benefit from Medicaid. So if you say you care about older citizens, and you care about babies being born, and you care about individuals with disabilities, you better protect Medicaid. And if you're saying you're going to block grant Medicaid, you can't say that you care about those Americans. You can't pull it off. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that our families who might not have thought about it lately but are going to think about it now, listen to a report like this. Here's a report from November, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, November 30th, 2016. Here's the headline. Medicaid block grant would slash federal funding, shift costs to states, and leave millions more uninsured. So when someone in Washington says they're going to block grant Medicaid, we've got to oppose them with all of our might. We have to make sure that we stop them from block granting Medicaid. We're going to do that here today. We're going to do that for the next several months. I don't care how long it takes. We're going to fight like hell against the block granting of Medicaid. So if they want to fight, on Medicaid, I'll fight any one of them. We'll fight any Republican who's going to block grant Medicaid. Because when you block grant Medicaid, you take health care away from babies and young children, you take health care away from people over the age of 65, and you take health care away from families like Rebecca who have a loved one with a disability. So if you want to fight a Republican, fight them on Medicaid. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Congressman Matt Cartwright, who represents PA's 17th Congressional District.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, how about another round of applause for Senator Bob Casey? I hope you were listening to Senator Casey when he talked about Medicaid, because that is the linchpin of what's going on in Washington now. We have these Republicans who have voted somewhere between 56 and 61 times to repeal Obamacare. They've painted themselves into a corner. They have to do it or they look silly. That's why they want to do it. They're also deathly afraid of Trump. And Trump has promised to do that as his first act. But pay attention to Medicaid. Senator Casey is exactly right. Why are we talking about Medicaid? From my own perspective, we're talking about community and rural hospitals. Yesterday, I was down in Fountain Springs, Pennsylvania, in Schuylkill County, just outside of Ashland. St. Catherine's Hospital was there. Tom McHugh, where are you? Tom and I were down there, and we were talking about how in April of 2012, on Good Friday, St. Catherine's Hospital closed. 150 jobs out the window because of what they had to do. They had to treat uninsured people who showed up at their doors at the emergency room. In fact, we talked to an employee, the head of the union down there. He said in January of 2012, they had 140 people show up at the emergency room. How many of those do you think had health insurance? 34 of them. The rest of the care had to be given by the hospital, and they had to absorb that care. They had to absorb it and absorb it and absorb it, and that's what the small hospitals had to do before the Medicaid expansion. And so St. Catherine's went out of business on Good Friday in 2012. And 2 months before that, can you think of a hospital in Carbondale that suffered the same fate? The Marion Community Hospital, out of business, 200 jobs out the door because Medicaid expansion had not come in. In 2015, the Medicaid expansion did happen and is shoring up the fiscal stability of our hospitals. So even if you are one of the lucky individuals who has been the beneficiary of health insurance, your employer gives you health insurance, you've been insured the whole time, even you have suffered a real, tangible impact, negative impact on your health care if your local hospital had to close without the benefit of the Medicaid expansion. Not every state has done this. Senator Casey is exactly right. Block granting this doesn't answer the question because who knows what Republican governors in different states will do with that block grant money. The ACA and its Medicaid expansion has insured so many more Pennsylvanians. You know how many more Pennsylvanians are insured because of that? 300,000 people in Pennsylvania. That's right. So as a result, if they go through with their repeal and their lame replacement, then all of those people will remain uninsured. Your local hospitals will be on shaky financial footing, and you may lose them. That's number one. Number two, 129 million Americans have pre-existing conditions. Diabetes, prior cancer, any kind of pre-existing condition. The ACA set a new standard. You're not allowed to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. And we get, I get letters every day from families with family members with pre-existing conditions. I got a letter from a lady in Oliphant 3 weeks ago. Her parents are in their late 50s. They both have terrible pre-existing conditions that require lots of treatment. And she said if pre-existing conditions are no longer treated as equal, that's going to be like a death sentence for her mom and dad. Yeah. This is not fun and games here. This is not just political footballs. This is life and death for American citizens. And so when I tell you 129 million Americans with pre-existing conditions are paying attention to this, you know they are. You know that when they hear about repealing ACA and replacing it with God knows what, they're being asked to step into an elevator shaft without knowing if there's an elevator there to catch them and save their lives. So I say to you, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. Join Senator Casey, join me, join Secretary Osborne. Keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. Thanks very much, everybody.